A family Christmas that doesn't go quite according to plan is the subject of Alan Ayckbourn's drama Season's Greetings, which is about to start on BBC Two. These are BBC One's programmes for the rest of the evening. In 20 minutes, we're off to Dallas, where goodwill seems in short supply at the oil baron's ball. However, Sue Ellen and JR will doubtless bury the hatchet at 10 past 10 when Linda Gray and Larry Hagman are tonight's special guests of Terry Wogan. At 10:45, we celebrate Christmas Eve with Val Doonican and his special guests, who include snooker star Dennis Taylor and Scots percussionist Evelyn Glennie. Well, that's before the first Mass of Christmas at 11:30, which comes live from Clifton Cathedral in Bristol and can also be heard in stereo on Radio 4. And that's how we're spending the rest of Christmas Eve here on BBC One.
A French hostage has been freed in Beirut in time for a Christmas Day reunion with his family. Homeward bound, 300 stranded ferry passengers. Yours for 4 million, an island in the sun. And the special helmet that means Christmas at home for Sam. Good evening. One of the French hostages in Lebanon has been freed in time for Christmas by the group which has been holding him since March. Aurel Cornea will fly home tomorrow. The Revolutionary Justice Organization said it was releasing him as a goodwill gesture. He walked into a hotel in Beirut this afternoon and is now in the care of the French embassy. But there's no word of a colleague who was kidnapped with him or of any of the other foreigners still held in Lebanon. Mr. Cornea's release comes on the same day that a French delegation returned from Iran, where they've been having financial discussions.
The release today was in the chaotic and sinister style which exists in Beirut. Aurel Cornea was bundled out of a car full of gunmen to make his way to a hotel full of reporters, French officials and Syrian soldiers. 292 days of captivity in the hands of an obscure group of Shiites. He was haggard and weak as he was driven away by embassy officials. A gesture of goodwill, according to the pro-Iranian kidnappers, but more likely a bit of political maneuvering, very possibly connected to negotiations about $1 billion loan which the Shah of Iran once made to France. This morning, French officials returned to Paris from Tehran after more discussions on that subject. And the French public has not been allowed to forget the plight of other French hostages. Every night, television has been carrying their names. 5 now remain in Beirut. Their relatives have made strenuous efforts for their release, and the French government has maintained assiduous contact, despite international disapproval, with Syria and Iran. Yesterday, the wife of Jean-Paul Kaufmann arrived in Beirut. Her husband, a journalist, was kidnapped in March last year. This Christmas, 17 foreigners are still missing. 5 French, 7 Americans, 2 Britons, an Irishman, an Italian, and a South Korean. They're held by various groups, and it's by no means certain that they're all actually in Beirut, or what will gain their release. Christmas, to the warring religious factions, is merely an opportune event in someone's calendar, but not to some. John McCarthy, the British journalist with Worldwide Television News, has been held since April 1985. His mother has made another appeal this Christmas for his release.
I appeal to you in the name of forgiveness, for which Islam and all Muslims are renowned, to give back my son his freedom. I call upon those holding my son, John McCarthy, to say who you are and tell me your intentions. My son is a young man, full of goodwill. I appeal to those holding John during our most solemn religious feast of Christmas to release him to a mother who wishes to see her son.
300 passengers marooned on board an Irish ferry since early this morning will go home tomorrow. The ferry, en route from Le Havre to Rosslare, was left drifting 16 miles off the Devon coast after a fire in the engine room. She's being towed into Plymouth tonight, and her owners have chartered a jumbo jet to fly the passengers home. They hope to take off from Heathrow in the morning and arrive in Ireland in time for Christmas dinner.
A fractured oil pipe caused the fire in the St. Killian's engine room. Oil spurted onto hot machinery and burst into flames. The crew failed to control the blaze with fire extinguishers, and the engine room had to be evacuated and flooded with firefighting gas, which finally quenched the flames. During the blaze, sleeping passengers were woken up and put on alert.
Well, with all fires there's a certain amount of danger, but once we had the fire contained there was no danger at all. We mustered the passengers to the public areas just in case there might have been some fumes coming from the fire into the accommodation, and we took that precaution.
No one was hurt in the fire, but it put the St. Kilian's engines out of action. A tug is now towing the ferry into Plymouth. Meanwhile, safe in the knowledge that the Irish Ferry Company has chartered a jumbo jet to get them home, most of the passengers have been making the most of the free bar. But would the 30 children on board miss Santa Claus tonight?
Hopefully not. I have been informed by our catering department in Dublin that they hope to have Santa Claus in Plymouth this evening or tonight when we arrive.
The St. Kilian will arrive back in Plymouth in about 2 hours' time. The passengers will spend the night on board. Tomorrow they'll fly to Dublin for Christmas Day at home.
Extradition proceedings have begun in the United States against a suspected IRA terrorist wanted in connection with bombings at 2 British Army barracks. The case against Peter McMullen, who was arrested last week, was adjourned until January. McMullen had asked to be deported to the Irish Republic. He was booked onto a flight to Dublin today, but he failed to board the plane. Instead, he was taken under armed guard to New York, where British detectives had lodged a warrant for his deportation directly to the United Kingdom. McMullen has been resisting attempts by the British government to extradite him since 1978, when he was arrested for holding a false passport. An American judge ruled that the alleged offences were of a political nature and rejected an application for deportation. Then earlier this year, a federal appeal panel overturned his ruling, making it easier to extradite suspected terrorists. The government's ordered an inquiry into how the details of Mrs. Thatcher's Christmas visit to Northern Ireland were leaked in advance. The Northern Ireland office say very few people knew of her visit, not even senior RUC officers. The Northern Ireland Secretary, Tom King, has condemned the disclosure as thoroughly irresponsible. James Molyneux of the Official Unionists said news of the visit was being circulated as early as last Thursday. And Mr. Paisley, who supplied the details to a Belfast newspaper, also claims it was common knowledge.
Everybody knows that Dublin leaks like a sieve. Everybody knows that the Northern Ireland office leaks like a sieve. So you put the 2 leaks together, you have a flood, and there would be something seriously wrong with your eardrums if you didn't get the message.
The Labour MP for Greenwich, Guy Barnett, has died suddenly at his home in London. He was 58. Mr. Barnett, who was a junior minister in the last Labour government, had a majority of just over 1,200 at the last election. Tonight, the Labour leader, Neil Kinnock, paid tribute to him, saying that news of his death would shock and distress people both inside and outside the Labour movement. The Soviet dissident Andrei Sakharov says he's told Mr. Gorbachev that he must free more political prisoners if he wants to improve relations with the West. But Dr. Sakharov, who returned to Moscow yesterday after 7 years in internal exile, says he's very impressed with the changes Mr. Gorbachev has made to Soviet society. He told journalists at his Moscow flat that his thoughts at Christmas were with those still in prison for their political beliefs.
The spiritual father of the Soviet dissident movement was today home at last to his Moscow flat, not afraid to talk about political issues which previously would have sent him straight back into exile. Dr. Sakharov said he had told Mr. Gorbachev personally that more prisoners of conscience must be released for the sake of world peace, and if he wants to improve relations with the West. Sakharov's wife, Yelena Bonner, also allowed to return from internal exile, said their thoughts this Christmas are with those still imprisoned for their beliefs.
Now we're very tired and not so good flat, and we have much business about our private life and have not time.
But hundreds of less famous Soviet dissidents face a bleak Christmas. One of them, Alexander Ogorodnikov, has appealed for mercy, begging to be shot. 8 years in a Labour camp have exacted a terrible toll. his only crime organising Christian seminars. Today at St Sepulchre's Church in London, a vigil to draw attention to his plight reached a climax. In the crypt, Athanasius Hart, a lay preacher, neared the end of a fast lasting 24 days inside this cage, identical in size to the one in which the Soviet dissident has spent months of freezing isolation.
He's probably the worst treated at the moment. He's blind virtually through malnutrition. He's lost his teeth. He's frequently beaten up. They flooded his cell with sewage a number of times. He's been in isolation for many, many weeks on end. He's one of the worst. He wrote in May that he had asked his mother to order his execution. He'd got to the end of his endurance.
A welcome visitor today was Irina Ratushinskaya, the Russian poetess recently released after 4 years in a labor camp for anti-Soviet agitation and propaganda. For Irina, an emotional occasion, a free woman this time peering into a mock-up of a cage in which she herself endured so much suffering.
When I was in prison, I haven't bought any flowers during 4 years. When my husband brought me flowers, they did not allow him to pass them for me. I'm very thankful to you.
But you've made flowers in prison. Your poems are flowers.
Afterwards, a service to pray for the release of Alexander Ogorodnikov and almost 1,000 more prisoners of conscience in Russia. Still frail, still not fully recovered from her own ordeal in prison, Irina has already courageously joined the campaign to demand freedom for all dissidents in the Soviet Union.
And the dissident movement in Czechoslovakia is also facing a trial of strength with the authorities. There, some jazz musicians are currently the focus for opposition to official state policy. Shortly after Christmas, 7 people, all members of the Czech Musicians Union, will appear in court accused of dissident activity. Their case has been raised in Britain. Nearly 60 of Britain's leading singers, composers and conductors have handed in a petition to the Czech embassy, calling for their release.
Christmas shopping in Prague as filmed illegally by a dissident camera crew. But this year, as usual in Czechoslovakia, Christmas is likely to be a pretty grey affair. The shops in Wenceslas Square are well stocked with goods, although just about everything has to be queued up for. But there's no let-up in the gloomy, repressive atmosphere which even the Russians have taken to criticising. Putting the 7 jazz section members on trial is a way of showing that nothing's going to change. In Czechoslovakia, jazz isn't just another form of music. It's a chance for many people to express their feelings about the political system. At this concert 3 years ago, a section of the crowd broke away and started demanding greater political freedom, recalling the brief period in 1968 when Alexander Dubček tried to introduce his short-lived reforms. This was how one Czech group tried to get round the system. Since the words of their songs had to be submitted to the censors, they decided to sing songs that didn't have any words. The jazz section, with its 7,000 members and its outpouring of articles and books, not just on music but on everything else as well, has been worrying the Czechoslovak authorities for some time. Their answer was to arrest 7 of its leading members. In her flat in Prague, the wife of one of the 7, Thomas Krivenek, agreed to speak to the dissidents' camera crew. There have been suggestions that the authorities might postpone the trial indefinitely, but Mrs. Krivankova thinks it'll be held during the Christmas holiday, when people in the West will pay less attention. If it is, she and her children face the prospect that her husband will be jailed for up to 8 years, a harsh penalty for an organization which, the Czechoslovak dissidents say, would be treated with honor in most countries.
And here it's been a bumper Christmas in the shops, and many presents bought this Christmas have been paid for with credit cards. Loans are up 20% this year, but the Bank of England is warning that the credit card boom could get out of control. Some people could find their flexible friend rebounding on them in the new year.
This is Barclaycard's Northampton headquarters, where in the Christmas rush they've been taking up to 10,000 calls an hour
from shops seeking authorization on big credit card purchases.
Can you tell me how much it's for?
But Barclaycard, like Access, do a careful check on the creditworthiness of their customers, and that's why they feel the Bank of England's criticism is aimed elsewhere.
We turn down more than 1 in 4 people who apply for a Barclaycard, and well over 40% of our people use their card as a payment card and don't pay any interest to us whatsoever. If you compare that with some retail grantors of credit, where if you go in with a cheque guarantee card and a driving licence, you can get up to £1,000 worth of credit, then I think there's a big difference to be drawn. And I think it does behove all issuers of credit to take a highly responsible approach to lending money to people.
So you're saying that shops which issue store cards don't take enough care?
Some of them don't, I'm afraid.
Credit these days comes all too easy. Walk through any big shopping centre and you can rapidly pick up enough plastic cards to give you access to thousands of pounds worth of instant credit. Store cards are promoted hard. If you take up their offer of extended credit, you wind up paying through the nose at very high rates of interest.
Right, so you're interested in that Lear Sears card, are you, madam?
Yes, please.
Have you got any identification with you?
No, I haven't.
Well, that's a shame. If you had to...
Here at Lewis's in Birmingham, they at least check to make sure you've never been the subject of a debt judgment in court. Some aren't even that careful, apparently believing if you've got other cards, you must be all right. If you're responsible, they're a useful aid to shopping. If you're not, they can be disastrous. Mary wasn't. She now owes £18,000 helped along by an array of easy credit. She now has to pay back £1,500 a month. Whose fault was it?
Obviously, partly mine, because I was very young and naive about the charges and everything. And I think partly the companies. They're not taking enough information from the person concerned.
It's simply too easy to get money.
Very easy, very easy.
Everywhere people are beginning to worry about whether the bubble is going to burst, and suddenly the small percentage of bad debts is going to grow, and the business will no longer be profitable and no longer be attractive.
In the meantime, thousands more will get deep into trouble and find the days of reckoning far outlast the glow of Christmas.
Well, anyone who didn't make it to the shops today will be glad to know that the ultimate Christmas gift is still on the market. It's a tiny island in the Pacific Ocean east of Australia called Carnethea. The property agency modestly calls it a place of undreamt beauty, and it can be yours for a price.
For once, the extravagant claims of the estate agents are justified. The ultimate in exclusive addresses. Your own island in the clear waters of the Pacific. A pleasant climate and the peace and quiet to enjoy it. Carnethea is a working plantation of over 3,000 acres, most of it covered with coconut palms. There's a small community living and working on the island, and tropical fruits are plentiful. The new owners could also boast their own coral reef to the north, and for recreation there's fishing for walu, tuna and marlin, as well as a good stock of crabs, lobsters and prawns. There is what's described as a homestead already built. It has staff quarters for 100. The estate agents are asking for serious inquiries only. The price on this paradise, about £4 million. This is Michael Peschart for BBC News in Australia.
Finally, an 11-year-old boy who spent the last 18 months in hospital will be going home for Christmas. Sam Ryan suffers from epilepsy, and his fits can be so violent, doctors were afraid he would seriously injure himself. Now, thanks to a special diet and an American ice hockey helmet, life is looking better for him.
Sam Ryan's been an epileptic since the age of 4. At the peak of his illness, he suffered as many as 58 fits in one day. The result? Some serious head injuries and the loss of 4 front teeth. But today his father Frank arrived to take him home for Christmas. There were some parting gifts from the hospital where he's almost one of the family. Sam suffers an unusual strain of epilepsy known as Lennox-Gastaut syndrome. After the failure of numerous drug treatments, a strict anti-allergy diet was prescribed a few weeks ago and is already giving encouraging results. Then there's the helmet, a new, light but tough piece of headgear designed and produced earlier this year for American ice hockey players. It was collected and flown in specially by an American airline from Denver, Colorado. And though it may look like something from Star Wars, It meant that Sam could safely leave his friends in hospital to spend Christmas with his family. Back home in Thames Ditton, they were delighted to see him, even in a helmet he'll seldom take off.
Over and above what's available in this country, it's got a face covering which incorporates a chin guard, which means that if Sam does fall forward, he won't damage his teeth, his nose or his chin.
He may not have his 4 front teeth for Christmas, but one thing he will have. Turkey is one of the few meats his diet allows.
And that's the news. Jan Leeming will be here tomorrow. Meanwhile, a Merry Christmas to you and good night.
Go on, clear off. He's been plaguing me all week, you know, and I've told him time and time again there's not going to be a white Christmas in this country this year. There was a time, I must admit, that we thought there could be some snow over the hills as the rain came south, but even that's clearing away now. Mind you, not very far away from our shores, there'll be a white Christmas over northeastern parts of France, Belgium, Holland, and later into western parts of Germany, a fair amount of snow falling there. But we've certainly turned a lot milder. These fronts have brought wet and windy weather up to northern parts. There's the rainfall chart at 9 o'clock this evening. The grey area shows the main rainfall picture. And if we get in a bit closer, you can see what's going to happen to that over the next 24 hours or so. Now, the rain then through tonight and tomorrow is going to work its way southwards, soon getting down into southern parts of the country. But then as it comes up against the very cold ground on the continent, that will be turning to snow, and I think a fair amount of snow before it turns back to rain again over, as I say, Holland, Belgium, and northeastern parts of France. Over here, you can see the clearer weather tucking its way down through tomorrow, but taking its time to get right down into southern parts of the country. So, as far as tonight's concerned, still dry over many parts of England and Wales, but through the night the rain will be coming, as I say, southwards, turning to snow over the continent, with clear weather coming down in behind. It's been pretty cold in the southeast, but temperatures are now lifting away as the winds freshen up and that rain pushes its way southwards. And then tomorrow, well, the country really split into two. Scotland and Northern Ireland, northernmost counties of England, quite a bright day with some sunshine. 1 or 2 little showers around up in the northwest, but most places dry. Over central and southern parts of England and Wales, a mild day, a cloudy day with some rain around, but that rain will gradually be clearing away as we go through into the afternoon. And it is going to be a pretty mild day, up to about 8 Celsius, 46 Fahrenheit. Well, that's it. I'll leave you with a summary.
Entertainment for Christmas Day on BBC One at 5:25, the Russ Abbott Christmas Show.
Good heavens. What is it, sir? See for yourself.
At 6 o'clock, Just Good Friends.
Could you leave that pen? I've got to file it.
It's a blank piece of paper.
That's a list of all my assets.
At 6:35, EastEnders. And Love Strikes at 7:05 in Only Fools and Horses.
Right now, these canteens of cutlery are a very exclusive line. You can only buy these in Harrods, Lippides and Patel's Multi-Mart.
At 8:20, Mystery and Intrigue. There's been a murder at the vicarage. Another new case for Miss Marple. Then at 10 o'clock, it's back to the Queen Vic. At 10:40, Educating Rita.
And what did he call you round here?
Sir. But you may call me Frank.
A great lineup of entertainment for Christmas Day on BBC One.